think, in fact, we can draw a few more links to what the students would have already read around the Bynum text. What I find interesting about this particular reading of history is this kind of the intersection with biopolitics. And we see, because in the Bynum, which is a very, very short introduction to the history of Western biomedicine, Western medicine, we look, for example, at the origins of vaccination, particularly in response to smallpox, and we see how it unfolds in England, but we don't really necessarily see that relationship with where the British were at that point in time in other parts of the world, including here in South Africa. And we also don't see kind of the more insidious aspects of that project of biopolitics. Or I guess the students will be aware of the concept of Enlightenment medicine, this idea that there was a moral justification for doing this work, for organizing structures in this way, particularly bringing civilization to uncivilized parts of the world, framing it with that kind of discourse, that language of Christian morality, and this is for the betterment of the people that the British were trying to control. And I think that if we start to read the Howard Phillips, we see very clearly, again, exactly what happened in South Africa around the smallpox, and the management of smallpox, and the introduction of vaccination as a way of kind of a mandatory way of kind of controlling populations and controlling people. And we can see both positive and negative aspects. I think we have that resonance today. We're talking a lot about the need for a vaccine in relation to COVID-19, and we still see that there are many people who are distrustful of vaccination. And when we try and understand the root of that distrust, we can link it back to the fact that people feel their bodies are being controlled. They don't have that autonomy, and they don't trust what's happening to them. And I think that distrust can be traced quite far back to this, to what was happening in the world around this time. So I think we will. Oh, sorry, please continue.
I just wanted to say that taproot that goes from the anti-vax movements all over the elite parts of the world, combined with people's very, very complex dialogical relationship with biomedicine. Even those of us that are trained in biomedicine, that are nurses and are doctors, that are clinical scientists or historians of health, anthropologists and sociologists of health, we have that yin and that yang, that pull, that dialectic inside of ourselves. We yearn for the magic bullet, the efficacious medicine. We yearn for the treatment. We yearn for the proven and just dispensation of some kind of a halt to human suffering. All human beings do. But at the same time, if we're not part of the elite that constructs that, and if we don't understand the mechanisms of it, either because we're blocked from understanding it or we're told we're too stupid to understand it, then the movement towards that treatment becomes highly complex and often is considered irrational by elites. And that's why if we go all the way up to the HIV/AIDS era in our country, which Van Rensburg only touches on slightly, and which the Phillips book deals with, and grapples with quite fully, we see the way in which when ordinary people become empowered about treatment action, and when they can understand the mechanisms, both the funding mechanisms, the clinical and scientific mechanisms behind the rollout of particular programs, then the biopolitical landscape shifts a bit, and there's much more of a shared discourse, and there's the involvement of people that are, at the fault lines and the so-called grassroots. But if the hierarchy in medical treatment is maintained, if it's infused with racial and class power, if it's dressed up in cultural apparatus that is distancing, then these campaigns can often falter and they can often fail. And that's why the social context of healing and health is absolutely as important as the bench science behind it as well.
Yes, I agree completely. And I think you've probably given the students a huge amount to think about. I would encourage them to go back to the brief for their history essay, to think about this discussion, especially around how they might start to kind of trace these issues through an argument that they're going to be making. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much, Stephen.